Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this segment of One-on-One. I'm Martin Falls, and what a guest we have for you today, Stan Gravois. You've seen Stan in many lights, seen him doing sports, you've seen him at the hospital, you've seen him coaching, teaching. Well, today, we're going to find out everything that makes Stan tick, right here on this episode of One-on-One. One-on-One is brought to you by the law office of Waits and Downer. I sort of see your career, your life, as a big root. You're putting in stuff, you can't let it burn, you got to keep on working it, all the different things that you did. Tell me if I'm wrong. I would sense that helped you from becoming bored too.
Yes, I would classify myself, although I've never been officially diagnosed as, ADHD or whatever it is. I would say that I have to keep moving. I would have to say that I can sit down at a computer and start putting, say, a video together for Sports on the Bayou for the high school scene. And your guys will send me some information and I'll start. And then I'll just stop and have to get away from it, you know? And then all of a sudden, the next thing I'm doing is I'm going to a school saying, listen, Mr. Principal, our athletic trainer needs this, and this to do his job here. And then I'll stop that, and then it may be go and talk to Diane or Phyllis about this or whatever. So yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree that but it's good for me too. Yeah. Because if it was just one thing, I think I would be totally bored.
Well, but it gives you a mind, a chance to process, and compartmentalize. And when you're ready, you'll get it.
The only time I think I ever slowed down, Martin, is, and you know this because, we sort of leaned on you here whenever all of this was happening too and everything, is my mom and dad both lived very full lives. Dad, 99, and my mom, 98. And probably the latter end of their life when we were sitting with them is when I finally said, "Oh, you got to slow down a little bit. You got to take care of the things that are important and things like that." And again, my family and my siblings, just wonderful what they did in assisting with all of that.
Well, but that's when you see families step up and you see other families handle it differently. But I saw what you did when that was going on, but that's what we expect from Stan Gravois. You were brought up a certain way, it was instilled in y'all, and so there's a lot of respect that we get to see when you do things like that. You handled it the way you should have handled it.
Well, that comes from mom and dad, and it comes from my siblings. And listen, none of us are no longer in, except for me. I'm the only in Terrebonne Parish now, just because of circumstance. I have siblings all over the country, basically. But, I'm going to name them Michelle, Anita, Cynthia, Celeste, Laurent, Gary. Man, they are the rocks, And when you say you see it out of me, you ought to see them. They're special. They're special people. And it's one of those tough times, but it's also one of those times. A lot of families the fabric starts to unravel when those things happen. I look back at it now, and although there were those times, it also brought us together, and we also realized how important, family is to each other.
Because it's a very stressful time.
So. And you mentioned that group from down the bayou and even from going to South Terrebonne, that's when the family was still together. I think, families that are together sort of thrive a little bit more than having that splintering effect,
Yeah. One thing, too, is I know a lot of people don't see it in the TV world, but when you walk in local grocery stores and different places, you're going to have to be able to stop and talk to people because they all want to talk about, because you were on the air for years with the sport, you had to sort of handle a celebrity role too. How'd you handle that?
Interestingly enough, in Houma, I never thought it was a problem. Obviously, I've been living in Houma for quite some time now. It's funny. I lived the first, my parents moved out of Montague to Napoleonville when I was 18. So I lived the first 20 years of my life in the Montague area, southern Terrebonne. Then from there it was Houma. for the next part. So I'm kind of, I don't want to call it moving on up because I don't want to do that. But you know what I'm saying. As far as geographically, I was moving on up. And when I look back at it, when I started doing the sports, I would go visit my parents in Napoleonville. And we would go to Mass on a Sunday morning in Napoleonville. That's when people would stop me and I would be like, wait a minute, I didn't know that many people in Napoleonville. My youngest brother went to Assumption High School, so he sort of did, but I didn't. And I'd be walking out of Mass and, you'd have a few people saying, you're the guy who does sports and stuff. And I'd go, wow, I get it more in Napoleonville probably.
Those bayou country areas, they express. Sometimes when you go in the heart of the cities, they don't say it because they're important too.
I agree.
They won't give you that little nod.
I agree.
But those country areas, batting the hatches down.
My biggest fan, by far, was my father.
Yeah.
And he watched and he would stay up late. And if my sisters are watching this, they're probably smiling when I say this because he used to, I got to stay and watch Stan, on Friday night sports. Yeah. He taught me some very valuable lessons. He always said, make Montague proud, make Terrebonne Parish proud. He always told me that.
Yeah.
But he also told me something else one time. He said, never embarrass a high school kid.
That's true.
And he says, you're in a unique situation where with your job, you know them. So if one little kid is not your model student, you might have the inclination to give him a hard time when you're describing his talent on the football field.
Right.
Don't do that.
Right.
And I did it one time and he caught me. There was a young guy who was at a school and he was not a model kid, truthfully. And he got burnt this one Friday night like over and over. So I made sure the guys here put every highlight that he got burned on and said, man, this guy's just getting burned left and right. And my dad said, you kind of picked on that one kid. And I was like, you noticed that? And if my dad noticed,
right.
It was, and I said, and I learned a lesson. And I don't think I've ever done that again.
Dads know.
Dads know.
They have that sense and they're pretty good at keeping their sons in line too.
He kept us in line. He also said, you may alienate some of your coaching friends along the way. And I was pretty much tossing softball to my coaching friends. Every once in a while I'd have one who would say, sort of tongue in cheek, man, you didn't give us enough props the other night or whatever, but it never got bad. They appreciate what we do here to promote them.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
That was one of your talents, still is, the ability to work them all in. And it's very easy sometimes to get caught in the, well, let's go cover Edie White. They got a stellar football program. So every week, let's do something on Edie White. Whereas another team may be struggling, but those kids still need some publicity.
Yes.
Sometimes you got to go, no, we got to go to this school. And you were pretty good at that.
We always tried, all of us here tried for sure, but I think on a level, even what I do at the hospital now, you realize even the team that's 2-8 as opposed to the team that's 8-2, those kids are giving effort. Man, that coach wants to win too. He doesn't have a cycle this year. He comes in cycles on the high school level. So you definitely understand that. Although I do think that I would pull for all high schools in this area. That's the one thing I'm very proud of. Nobody's ever said, well, you're a homer for this school or for that school. That's never really come up.
Right.
Listen, I went to South Terrebonne. It's what I knew. I coached there. But a lot of people were like, no, Stan in general just sort of cares for all of the kids, not only in our parish, but in our bayou region. And I would hope that's what because it's the truth. I mean, everybody's trying to do the right thing. Some people get caught up in the minutia a little bit, but from the standpoint on the high school level, them guys don't get paid enough money for us to sit here and criticize.
We got to laugh sometimes because I remember when Edie White a couple of years ago was making that run. And then I went back to a Vanderbilt game, and one of the parents jokingly said, I knew the guy very well. Oh, you're here this week, huh? Last week you had Edie White, and you're a Vanderbilt guy. I'm going, we got to cover them all.
That's right.
And Edie White has some good kids doing some good parents, so you just got to look at the whole broad scale.
And you want to recognize those that are doing well. And if it is E.D. White who's doing well, if it is Terrebonne High who's doing well, if you want to give them that special, but I would hope that people understand, hey, it's their year. This is their time. They're in competition for a state championship.
Somebody's years old. We had Berwick and
Sure.
Vanderbilt, come up for state baseball championships, and E.D. White,
I can remember
the last few
being
years.
really, really on Berwick one year in baseball. This was about 4 years ago, and I was still here on a consistent level. And we really were following Berwick. And somebody asked me, "Do you know anybody at Berwick?" No, but those kids are exceeding, and we're kind of going to make sure that they get their just due.
Knew Lud Henry. I played against him. He was
Bud
a good
Henry
athlete.
was a player, and his son Seth
son's a
Henry
good
was
cook,
a heck of a player too at Tulane.
They were both here in the desk with me recently.
Very
but
good.
as you look at your career, and we're going to get to the one word at the end. I already know what I would say, but I'm going to give you the chance to say.
Okay.
But as you see the many different things that you got to do, was there any one defining moment of any job that put you in that circumstance where it gave you the ability to do all these other things?
Yes, and that was my move to Terrebonne General. That was so out of the blue. And I've told you this, and I'm going to say it publicly, and I've told this to other people too, our friend Mike Fake, and I have to thank you guys because that's where the genesis of that started. I'm in year 29 and a half. I'm thinking about retirement, but I might do my 33. And Mike Fake gives me a call and says, "Hey, the CEO of Terrebonne General wants to meet with you." And I'm like, "Who is that?" I didn't even know who Phyllis was, right? And I go over and meet with her, and she's starting, sports medicine there, and says, "I need that person who could sort of be the liaison, but yet think outside the box." And that's the key word, Martin, for me. It was like, think outside the box. How can we do this, yet maybe not be that clinical facility and help our community? And after actually turning her down a couple of times, she kept calling me back.
You can't turn Phyllis down.
No, you can't. And she called back one time and I said, "So you're like really serious?" We didn't even talk money or anything, but I'm like, "You're really serious about this?" She said, "Yes." And I was kind of like, "Why?" And she said, my boy at that time, Jacob, was playing football.
Yeah.
And, they watch Friday night sports. I know what Martin thinks about you. I know what Mike thinks about you. I know that you can be an asset. I know what the principals in town think about you, and I know what the superintendent thinks about you. So you can be an asset to us. I don't need a clinical person now. I don't need a doctor or a nurse to do this. I need somebody who understands the school system. And I said, "I'll give you what I got," but it all came from that. That's when like the door was open. You have no chains anymore. You can help the school system. I've probably in the last 10 years, because this was 10 years ago that this happened, I've probably helped the school system, all schools, private and public, in Terrebonne Parish more in the last 10 years than I did my 29 and a half years of teaching in the system. Because I do logos for them, I provide CPR for them, and although I'm sort of phasing out of my role with some of those things, I was very proud of that. So yeah.
And you do some funding for them too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And when you consider that even the Hall of Fame, which it wasn't my idea for that to be necessarily a fundraising event, it has now become where those entities that support it, their money goes right back into concussion testing for the kids in our area. So the kids in our area now who are playing are standing on the shoulders, basically, of the greats who played in the past. Because those Hall of Fame ceremonies are generating funding to keep the kids safe.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
I'll tell you, this show flies, so we're nearing the end. But first of all, thank you for everything you've done. You sit up there thanking people at the banquets all the time, but you deserve a lot of credit for what you've done. And high school names that would have never been mentioned, past players who might be sitting in their rocker watching the new players now, have a new breath of recognition that y'all give them. But so thank you. Thank you for doing that and continuing to do that. We appreciate that.
I appreciate it very much. And again, I say thank you to you who allows us this opportunity to get that out there. I told you this one time when I first got the call from Joe McCann back in the day when he was your sports director, I was sort of like, I don't think I can do this, Joe. I'm not interested, you know. And he talked to me a little bit. And my wife kind of said, no, you have the opportunity to stay in the community and promote it. So that's sort of why I did. And it's been such a great experience. All I ask for is good experiences in life, and it's been a really, really good experience. And for those people who come to the Hall of Fame banquets or they just kind of see who's inducted each year and say, well, they're going to run out eventually. You're never going to run out.
No.
You're never going to run out. We just talked about Mason Smith and Gavin Dudas and Jalen Lucas, who was like the Big Ten Freshman of the Year from Terrebonne High. And you turn Elijah McGuire, who a couple of years ago was playing pro ball. It never stops.
The future looks bright.
It never stops. And it's sad to say there's a kid who's going to graduate high school next year, 2024, who's not going to know who Elijah McGuire was.
Right.
You know, that's sad.
But y'all are able to
we're going to
resurrect.
We're going to keep on trying to resurrect it.
So if I were able to get, of course, your parents, and I got Coach Marcella, and Richard Curlin, and Terry Prejean, and Clarence. Of course, we'd have to tell Clarence you got to tone it down to one word. And I said, look, y'all come up with one word to describe Stan Gravois. What would you hope, and your wife, of course, what would you hope?
My wife might be different than the rest.
What would you hope the one word would be?
I think, that's a great question. I wish you'd have prefaced me with this one. When you were saying a few of them, I would have said reliable. And then when, you said my mom and dad, I don't know. I know what I wish they would have said, and I don't know that, that necessarily would have been, but I'd have thought, I don't know. But if all of them said, that's a good boy, I'd be happy. If they just said, that's a good boy.
Yeah.
Country, you talked about country.
That comes with most of. I'll throw a couple of them. Versatile, dedicated.
Richard Curlin would have said versatile.
Yeah, you're versatile.
He would have definitely said that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So I had to put my 2 cents.
Yes.
But I want to thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for coming here. And it's good to be in the hot seat, isn't it?
It's interesting. I see this, in my career here, and I'm always watching. And I was like a little apprehensive, when I got the call about it. But I knew sitting down would be fun just to catch up with some things too. So I really appreciate it. I've been very, very lucky. My wife might say lucky for that word. I've been very, very lucky.
Well, Stan, thank you so much for what you've done. And we're going to see you some more.
Thank you, Martin.
All right.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.